don't know, this is Kyle Gellis from Warped Cigars. I intentionally did not do a ton of research on you, other than I know that I've loved your products for years, but I don't know that much about your background, your story. You're down in Florida, right?
Correct.
And you have cigars such as La Colmena, which I'm smoking right now, and Leo Rojo and Cloud Hopper, and the list goes on. So first off, before we get into that, thank you for coming on the show. Like I said, I've loved what you're doing for years, and part of our goal for the publication is to be able to introduce people to new brands and products and people behind the brands and tell the story of them. And so we're going to go through this as if our audience has no clue who you are or what your brand is, and hopefully we can introduce new cigar smokers to what you're doing. And if they've been smoking Warped cigars for years, hopefully they'll get to know the brand better and learn something new about what you guys are doing. So
awesome.
So take us back to the beginning of you and how you got just interested in cigars. Like, what was your first cigar? How did you end up
doing this? I guess is the age-old question. Like, how does someone, I guess, that young break into it? So, I was born in '88. So like I grew up with, developmental years in like the boom era. And my father was a cigar smoker.
Right.
So like, and he was a doctor. So he worked long hours and, stuff like that. And so he would come home and like the first thing he would do is go to his humidor and like get a cigar out and, get a drink. And, you kind of like want to spend time with your dad when you're that age. But, so he's always working. So instead of like sending me off and like, he wanted to be alone and have a cigar, he'd have me sit in his study with him. And, while he smoked. And so like from a young age, I got to learn about, kind of the consumer side, I guess, what brands he smoked, what flavor profiles he liked, because he would talk about this stuff, the construction, if the draw was tight, how that's, not a good thing. You're like, at this age, I'm like 6 years old, 7 years old.
So he was pretty into cigars. He wasn't just smoking them here or there. He was
no. It was like multiple humidors in the house. Taking us to cigar shops, even though like when we go on vacation around the country, you'd always have to stop at the cigar shops in the area. He'd be on the patio in the summer. Like it was the whole nine. Obviously in the boom, in the '90s, it was just an unfathomable amount of desire for cigars. But my dad was always a Habano smoker and Cuban. So, that's kind of like where those profiles that I blend for come from, is from hearing all that as a child and trying to emulate what I learned about. And so, the years go on, sneaking a few cigars out of his humidors across the way as I was a younger kid, that whole nine, trying to be like dad, 8 years old, like trying to, steal a cigar out of his humidor and be like dad.
Yeah.
And then like when I was 16, he gave me my first cigar, like an actual, this is for you to smoke. And that was a Monte Cristo No. 2 Habano. So that was the first cigar I had, officially. And so after that, kind of like got the motion started, looking into not only just cigars in general, but the history of them, the history of the brands. I'm very much into branding, and that kind of drew me, a little bit further in, was these beautiful old vintage artworks and colors and all that. And so like it really had to dive in. And then at 18, I was closing up the paintball company that I started when I was 14, because that was right when the housing market crashed. And, everyone started to, panic, and, the paintball industry my future on it wasn't a viable one. So I decided to just pack my car up and drive to Little Havana. And this is back in, 06. Back then there was a lot more, factories on Calle Ocho. And I went from factory to factory looking for someone to just teach me about, cigar and the tobacco and the process. And all of them said no, except for one, which was Untitled Chapter, and that was Sandy. And, so still to this day, 15 years later, I'm still working with Sandy. She's the only factory left. And, Warped is still around. And, it's kind of just one of those, she kind of like, I think maybe saw like the motherly aspect, and like this kid walks in and is like asking to just, learn. And this is back when Willie was still working there. This is
right
from Drew Estate. Like, this is a long, long time ago. And so that's kind of really how it happened. And then from that perspective, I was making cigars in Miami. And then obviously I was in college at the time, and I was driving back and forth from Orlando at UCF to Miami every week. So on Friday mornings, I would take a Thursday, I would take like the late class or the night class. And then Friday mornings, I would jump in my car and I'd drive from Orlando to Miami. I'd spend the weekend. And then on Sunday nights, I'd drive back to Orlando. I did that for 4 years. And
Yikes.
Yep. And so that's a 3.5 hour drive each way. But, that was a dedication that, I had to learning more and building. And then obviously, my start in tobacco and selling cigars wasn't actually on a wholesale level. It was actually on direct to consumer through cigar forms, BOTL, Cigar Asylum, like all the old, cigar forms. And I was selling 5-packs and 10-packs, and we had brands like Anubis, Osiris, Private Blend, Abidos, so really Egyptian themed stuff back then. And then I started to develop more and more time. When I got out of college, I was like, okay, now it's time to put the foot to the gas. And we came out with El Oso and La Colmena out of Miami, and then Don Ronaldo. And then from there, it was essentially Sandy, I need to make more cigars, and they need to be, more affordable, because Miami product is very expensive to make.
Right.
So she goes, I only trust one person, and that would be Eduardo Fernandez from Anganorsa. And so she called over to Josefa, who was the general manager there at the time, and, got Paul Palmer on the phone, and Paul said, have him come over. So I went over to their offices in Miami, and I met with Paul Palmer, and we came out with Flor de Valle. We started blending tobacco that day in the back, and Flor de Valle came out shortly thereafter, and that was it.
And then the rest is history.
Then the rest came, the part of trying to build the brand and getting it accepted, but we had a completely different disruptive nature to how we sold the product. In the premium industry that wasn't well received in the beginning, and we were told that it would never work, and still to this day we follow that that rule, and it's just we had to be different in order to kind of gain the the exposure that we needed, but also just a sales tactic that I saw that was better, which was that we don't employ reps, we don't employ brokers. Everyone who sells Warped works here at this office. They don't go on the road. They don't go door to door. They don't do that. We marketed our vision to the consumer, and the consumer supported it. And, we're always humbled by that aspect, but they're the ones who love the brand, and they helped grow us. They requested it to be sold in their shop. So all of our shops are organic. It was a completely different sales factor, and it wasn't very welcomed by a lot of people, especially on the independent broker side and stuff like that. But, we've never wavered from it.
I was going to say, was that kind of the first of its kind of a brand starting and saying, like, we're not going to do the traditional sales rep approach? Because
that'd be Padron.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
Padron has that. It's all in house. But it's the same. I guess the same thought process is that everyone that works here, as a team member here, they're solely dedicated to Warped, and there's no better people to have that when you have complete dedication to a singular brand. It allows for a complete immersement in our culture, in our vision, and they know how to represent it to the max. We're not just a SKU in someone's catalog. Or we have it, but then the commission may be better from a brand that has the ability to get better commission. You get pushed to the side. We control the destiny. We control the narrative. And, that has allowed us to really put an emphasis and a lot of our capital into more quality, tobacco, because we don't have to pay travel expenses. We don't have to pay all those things that come along with having massive sales teams like that. So we've been able to navigate a little bit more freely and put every little bit of capital that we have into making sure that the quality of our material and the quality of our tobacco and the quality of our roll is top notch.
So you said you got into cigars from the influence your father had.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about cigars that drew you in? Because there are people who, dad or grandpa, whatever it is, smoke cigars, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, and it doesn't click with them. But you seem to be drawn to that from a young age. So what about the product or the industry or the craft of it?
It was really, the aspect of the kind of the bonding that I had with my father during it, because it was like kind of like our thing. I have 3 brothers, and it was the thing that like dad came home and like I went and spent time with him. It was a way to spend time with my father when he came home after rounds at the office. And he was gone for days, and so it was one of those composites. But when I smoked my first real experience of it was kind of the flavor profiles that drew me in, and seeing what you could get flavor wise out of tobacco at that young of an age. It wasn't really that. It was the branding of it. It was the camaraderie. It was the people, but really like you get immersed in it when you actually go to the factory and you start, being in a factory on a consistent basis, and you see that just the love and appreciation that these rollers have for their craft. Like at El Titan, all the rollers are from Cuba. They're all level 9 rollers. And, when they came to the United States, they had the ability to do anything they wanted. They had the ability to switch crafts. They had the ability to go to schools, and they could do whatever they want. They had a new beginning, but they chose to come back to roll cigars once they found out that there was a factory in Miami. And that speaks, loads of volume, that they're so dedicated to that craft. It's inspiring when you're actually on the factory floor. When you're watching the hustle and the bustle and the screaming, and if you've been on a factory floor, like you understand, like it's a lot going on. There's a lot of it's a sensory overload, but there's still so much attention to detail that is kind of that. I've always been into how things are crafted, the luxury craft aspect of it and the tradition of the industry. So it was kind of a little bit of everything that kind of drew me in. But once I really started to blend tobacco, that's really where it solidified, and trying to always challenge myself to make, to go above and beyond what I've previously done. And it was really just every little detail that made, me who I am, and, made Warped what it is.
The story of that factory is cool. So I knew, like, I've been smoking cigars for about 8 years. And right when I got into it, I just dove deep into it. And anytime something from El Titan came up, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And I couldn't pinpoint it. I didn't know that much about them. I just knew everything they were producing and what you were producing with them. Willie Herrera, Padilla, just everything coming out of that shop. I was like, this is clearly rolled with a quality that you don't find consistency like this in other places. And it's not to trash or talk down to other factories. But I was like, something they're doing is I don't know what the word would be. Just they care about the craft. And so then my wife and I went down to Miami. This was last year. I didn't really know anything about Little Havana. We went over there, walking down the street, stopping in the shops, and I was like, oh yeah, this factory's on this road. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was looking for like some huge building downtown or if it was going to be a warehouse. And then I see it on the corner. I was like, oh, this is this tiny little shop. And I sort of knew what to expect of the environment of what a factory would be and the process of rolling cigars. But I'd never seen it firsthand outside of events at shops where rollers come. But so we walked in, and it wasn't Sandy. It was Sandy's daughter.
Giselle.
Yes. She just kind of looks at me funny. She's like, can I help you? So I don't think they get that many people that just walk in.
Oh, no, they do.
Really knowing who they are off the street, or do people just...
People come in like it's a tourist thing. That's the thing is El Titan is public. Anyone can walk in and see,
Yeah. So like, I was like, oh, this is much smaller than I thought. There's like just 5 or so tables. There's probably
right
more
now,
than that. I'm getting numbers wrong.
Yeah, probably like 8 to 10.
Okay.
So There's 8 to 10. Then there's obviously the people who put bands on, the boxers, so that's on one side on the right hand side when you walk in, and then the main gallery, which is the 8 tables are right up front, and then in the back there's Sandy's office, then the bail room, then the aging room.
Yeah. So we walk in. I told her how I became aware of them, and then she just like super inviting, walking us through the process and giving us a tour of the shop and sending us home with stuff that they were working on. Like, oh, have you ever had a fresh rolled cigar? Try this. And I was like, that's an awesome experience for someone to be able to walk in and see the back end of the cigar industry, have it be that inviting. And just the initial conversation was like, oh, you enjoy what we do, you're passionate about the industry, like let's dive deep into it and take you through the process, and finding people that are passionate about it enough where all they want to do is teach, bring other people into the industry and share their craft is super cool to find. And the cigar industry is, I mean, there's other industries out there like this, but it seems to be just steeped in heritage. And when you go to a factory like that, they're like, this is our family tradition. This is just what we do. It's what we're made to do. And they do it with perfection, which is awesome to see firsthand. And then you go to shops all over the country and you see all this stuff from that factory and you're thinking like, oh, this has got to be coming from some crazy huge factory because it's everywhere and they're doing Cohiba and then you go down to it and it's like, oh, this is a small family run operation that
it has been for 45 years. It's a lot that has to do with Titan and why it is what it is. It's Sandy, it's the factory, it's the rollers, it's it's everything. They work singular down there. So in countries like Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic and Honduras, they work in pairs. One bunches, one applies the wrapper. In Cuba, they don't do that. They work singularly. So it's one roller rolling 100 cigars a day, where a factory with, I don't know, other companies, quotas, but you could roll 300-400 cigars a day per pair, so 4 times the amount in the same 8 hours. So in 8 hours, they roll 100 cigars per roller. And, which is why getting product out of Titan is so difficult and so time consuming, is because they can only do one client at a time. So, if like we just got La Colmena in stock, so our production now is won't be available for months to make something else. So making things is difficult. And then obviously you're paying American wages, you're paying, American overhead. So it's very, very different. And that's, where the pricing comes from, and the quality just comes from the family itself and the rollers. Like you said, if you think Giselle was, very warm and welcoming, and she is, but you haven't dealt with her mother yet. Sandy's kind of like my Cuban mother, and she has been for a very long time. And anyone who ever meets Sandy knows that, she's the most welcoming and inviting person, when you get into her house. And, so like, it's wild. Like she's also a little bit of a pit bull too. So you got to be careful of that one.
She has to be. I mean, if she's running a business like that.
Yeah, she is. But then also, like, I was there one day and like she was supposed to come down. Giselle was there. This was like 6 weeks ago. And like, I'm there for like 4 or 5 hours. She's late. And I'm like, I got to get back. Cause like, I got to get back to the office. Cause then also we got northbound Miami traffic, which is just atrocious. She walks in the door and I'm like, oh, Sandy, I'm like, sorry, I'll see you next week when I come back down. She goes, sit your ass down. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like, all right. I'm like, so I had to stay because like, she's just the way she is. Like, she's just, she didn't take no shit. And, so she's really the guiding light of that factory. And then, Giselle is there now, taking over the reins and making it much more streamlined and things like that. And so it's cool. It's a cool spot. You never know who you're going to run into when you walk in there. You really don't. Media has walked in before because they were just in Miami doing something. They've walked in. It's been me, Willie, Padilla, and then, a bunch of other people from Manganor. I mean, like, you never know who's going to be in that back office, just sitting around and smoking and drinking coffee.
Right.
So it's kind of funny.
Yeah. So So for people who aren't familiar with Al Titan and that I guess that family's history, Sandy is, or Willie Herrera, master blender at Drew Estate. That is his mother, correct?
That is his mother. That is his mother-in-law. Giselle is Sandy's daughter. Yes, Giselle is Sandy's. Giselle and Willie have been together since they were 15.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a long time with those, with Willie.
Yeah. and so they're rolling the Miami, or the Herrera Miami.
That's correct.
For Drew Estate, they're rolling your cigars. They're doing Padilla.
La Polina.
They have the new. Okay.
They have the Goldie with La Polina, Mr. Sam as well. I believe, I'm not sure. I don't know if they moved that or not. And then they have, I think a few other brands, but I can't 100% say. I just know they have Drew with the Herrera Miami. They have us with Colmena and Don Ronaldo. And then also some limiteds that will El Oso, but we'll also do some limiteds out of there as well. They work they make cigars for drop for me. Then they make, Padilla and a few others.
Very cool.
In general with the Cohiba.
Yeah, that one, they did a good job on that one. I just because I've had access to smoke stuff as it's coming out, and Cohiba is one of those brands that I've just kind of ignored in a sense. Like there's which I shouldn't be doing. There's these heritage brands like Cohiba and Monte Cristo and Romeo, and for a long time I was just kind of going after the boutique stuff coming out. But then I saw they did the M, and I was like, okay, this is phenomenal, and they did a good job with it. But anyways, they're in Little Havana in Miami. Are you in that area as well now, or where's Warp based out of?
Warp's based out of Jupiter, Florida, so West Palm area, about an hour and 10 minutes north of Miami.
Okay. Are you back in Miami pretty frequently, or do you primarily work out of?
No, pretty much every week.
Okay.
So I usually see Sandy once a week. I'm usually at the factory once a week, usually on Saturdays, just because the traffic's easier to stomach. And then I'm in Nicaragua pretty much every 8 weeks.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So what factory do you have down there? Or what other manufacturers do you work with?
We work with Anganor Salif in Esteli. I've worked with them for 8 years. They're one of the largest and one of the best tobacco growers in the country of Nicaragua. They manufacture a lot of brands that are phenomenal. There's, obviously they manufacture for us. They have their own brand, Anganor Salif. They manufacture Illusione, Foundation. So a lot of great people, in this industry realize what that tobacco is, and they decide to, make amazing cigars with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, everything they touch is phenomenal. Illusione is one of those brands that I got very into for a long time, and then Agnar Salif. That's another one that I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a few weeks and just go through everything they've made. Which I would definitely recommend people to do, because people try one cigar from a brand, and then in their mind that's what represents that brand. Which I guess there's nothing wrong with that if you find what you like from a brand. But factories and blenders and companies express their ability to create product in so many different ways. And so it's cool to see companies that not only are making cigars for what they think will sell, but what they love to smoke. And what seems to stick out is the brands that are like, we're making this blend because it's what we love. We hope you'll like it, but it keeps the passion behind it. And so when you're blending cigars, what's that process and what drives you to finalize a blend or create a new one?
There's a lot of inspirational aspects. You can be inspired by, I always say there's really two ways that a project begins for Warped and for myself: is inspiration from an idea or a piece of art or something like that will drive forward the desire to represent it as best as you can in a blend of tobacco. You can see like Nicotina one of our most recent releases from Anganorsa, I found the original 1880s artwork, and it inspired me to create, a more fuller-bodied cigar for what we would consider full body here at Warped. And, we took the artwork from 1880. The artwork actually was meant for a shop. The brand was meant for a shop in Philadelphia from Cuba. It was meant to be like a store exclusive or a store brand. And we found the original engraving. I had the engraving remastered. I had the engraving redone by my engraver in France. And he created it on, steel and did everything like that and made some modern tweaks to it. And so that inspired it. So that was an example of, the representation of visually seeing something and inspiring. And then obviously there is the inspiration of being shown new tobacco, whether like, I was at Anganorsa's Miami office, and Paul Palmer pulls out a Viso Corojo 12 from a bale and says, try this. So I roll a Purito and, I smoke it and I'm like, this is very good, Paul. And he goes, yeah, it's 6 years old. So like, I'm like, okay, like I go back, and then just from there, I started to work with the 2012. It just depends on the situation. It's either tobacco related for me, or it's visual representation to me. The hard part is trying to create a blend that, best is showcased, when you have an art thing first, when you have art first, because then you're trying to match it. It's much easier, and for me to do it with just tobacco, but then finding art to match it, it almost feels inorganic to me, which I don't like. So I'm always in a confused state, when I'm trying to do it, is because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And then sometimes you just make a blend that's very good, and then it's not really good for the when you try to if you're going to put it to market. But I'm like, I'm just going to call it the number 508, and just not put a band on it, because but then that's not going to work for the market a lot of the time. So we release those through limiteds or something like that, just because the grand spectrum aspect is not there. And then for us, I'll blend something in 6 different sizes, and I'll smoke through them all, and then I'll just pick the one that best expresses the blend, and then we don't make the rest of the sizes, which is why Warp's portfolio is so small in terms of the SKU numbers, is because we'll make GR88 in one size, we make Colmena in one size, we make Hacienda in 2 sizes, and those are the sizes that best represented the blend. We made that decision, so we don't want to make 7 different sizes. It's just not what we do. We keep everything slim and streamlined.
I was hanging out with Bradley Rubin last night at an event, and we were talking about just like that process of how cigars are blended, and they're blended for a specific size, but then the market likes big ring gauge, get the value out of that. So then brands end up creating 10 different SKUs or whatever they end up with that same blend, because that's what sells. And so it's cool that there's brands like yours out there that are like, this is the best expression of this blend, and this is what we're going to sell, which is awesome. And then like you said about how do you brand a cigar or find artwork or a name that's going to represent what you blended. So do you end up with just like a huge list of ideas and be like, how do we pair these together? Or do you have a vision of the branding and the story as you're blending?
That's the hard part, because then if you can be inspired by it, but then, the thing is that when you blend a cigar, I never make a decision on the table, at the table, because the cigar is still wet, still, because it needs to be a certain level of humidity to be pliable, to be rolled. It's not aged, so we have a different process here at Warped, which is why it takes so long for us to make, blends. Like GR88 took 2 years. Maestro del Tiempo took 18 months to blend before I was happy. And because when I'm done blending, I let the cigars age for the same amount of time that I would let them age for production for consumers. So, our typical age day is, 90 days. That's minimum. So I smoke the cigar and I make a decision at 90 days. If it's not what I want as a blend, I have to redo it. So I've already lost 90 days. So I'm already down 3 months. So if I go back and do it again, I make a minor tweak, and it's not what I want, now we're 6 months behind,
Right.
So like the process is very long and very painstaking, but it's the right way to do it. It's not a quick way. It's not something that, for, intensive purposes is probably popular amongst other, brands. It's just the way that we do it at Warped, it's different. But we take our, the support of our, of our fans very seriously. They've come to expect a certain level of quality from Warped, and that's how we give it to them. We take the time, we do all that, the time comes from us, and then we're literally doing all the work for you to enjoy it. Your time is very precious. So we want to make sure your enjoyment is on par.
You're doing it. So if that makes you feel better, the 3, 6, 9 months, whatever it takes to blend a cigar is working well. So
well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
The La Colmena, this is the third or fourth one that I've had. It is usually there's something about a cigar that I'm like, I wish it either had a little more spice or less spice, or just the draw is struggling, or just whatever. Usually there's something.
Yeah.
These are excellent. How much, like, I know this is from El Titan.
Yes.
How much trial and error did this take to nail down? Was this one of those that you took? I guess, how long was the process, if you could talk about that?
I think the process on that one was just years almost, because I was always playing with that wrapper, that De Ferrata wrapper. It's very distinct, has a very distinct aroma to it. But the time frame of blending with it is because when you work with a Connecticut shade, in my opinion, and in my blending, opinion, is that most people would want to make sure that it's light. There's actually a fairly decent amount of Viso in that blend. And one specific Viso that we get from Anganorsa. And, working with that, that's really the forte of that blend. And obviously the wrapper is really the giant of that, because there's so much flavor in that cigar. But the longest process to it was actually the closed foot and getting it correct. If you actually notice on the foot of a Colmena, if you've seen other closed foot, cigars, they usually just take the excess wrapper and they push it down, and there's usually a hole for the humidity to escape, so the cigar actually dries in a reasonable time.
Okay.
With Colmena, what they do is they actually fold the wrapper like a present, and they push it down, so there is no gap, there is no hole. So what happens is the cigar actually ages in itself. It doesn't have outside influence. It's not escaping the humidity. So it's a much slower aging process, which gives it that weird kind of, funk that I like to call it. So that was the deciding factor, aging the cigars in a regular close foot way in the beginning process when I was going through the blend with it, and, or the regular close foot way, an open foot, or my crazy idea of actually folding it like a present and, trapping the humidity that's inside. So if you're ever familiar with wet wrapping cigars, it's kind of like that, just on a lesser aggressive basis. So it's just aging in itself. And that's really what I believe gives Colmena its uniqueness.
The word you used was funk. Which,
funk.
Yeah. So that's pretty dead on accurate. And it's funny how, like, when I smoke cigars, that you would use that flavor description, and you tell someone that, they're like, why would I want to smoke that? And that's a hard flavor note to describe. I think it comes more from the aroma.
Twang. Yeah, it's the aroma, but the terms used a lot in Cubans with twang. There's a certain twang to Habanos. And, I believe that, Colmena has its own signature flavor and aroma that is very distinct to Colmena, and Colmena in its own.
What do you like to smoke this with? What do you like to smoke
water.
Cigars with in general?
With that cigar, mineral water.
Really?
Yeah. You have to understand, like, a lot of the time, if I'm smoking, like, I'm a consummate professional to my brand. So I don't want outside influence from coffee or from whiskey, or when I'm working, like in terms of like checking product, sure. Like today, like, smoking, checking Moon Garden, or after that we have Cloud Hopper, I need to make sure that the cigar is performing the way it should perform.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm here and doing, what needs to be done on a daily basis, which is reviewing cigars all day long from different production eras, to see how they're coming together, it's always with mineral water. If I'm just smoking to sit down and relax and have a cigar, it's usually black coffee,
Okay.
or Cubano or whatever the case is, or whatever I have in front of me. But that's pretty much it. Like, I dedicate a majority of my smoking time to ensuring that the product is where it's supposed to be.
How do you like to enjoy cigars when work is not in question, when you're just sitting down to enjoy it? Because I've talked to so many different brand owners or blenders, and it kind of sucks for them, because a lot of times they're like, I don't really get to smoke for enjoyment anymore, because they're constantly trying new blends, and not saying they don't enjoy it, but they don't get to just sit back and disconnect and have a cigar and a drink with it, or whatever they're going to pair it with. So when you're able to do that, what does that look like?
That really is just, honestly, it's either I'm here, or, really, I think it's just like I'm at my house on my patio, and I have my pit bull on the couch on one side, and I have my Cane Corso Sarto on the other side. And, I pretty much just sit on the couch and just sit with them and do nothing, like that's pretty much like the time of enjoyment for me, is just, otherwise I'm here, working and reviewing, especially like we're in a time like right now where, the brand is in such demand that, we're putting so much emphasis on making sure that the quality and the consistency is there. Mm-hmm. Like we got a shipment in of product last week, and I've just been going through it every day, multiple SKUs, reviewing it against old productions from a year ago, from 2 years ago, to see the progressions, opening the cigars, to make sure that the blend placement is exactly what it should be, and then, and then on Monday we have another shipment coming in, and that process will begin again. It's a constant, sit down and make sure that it is what it is, because we do hold our brand in a very high regard interiorly, and our, the fans of our brand, they have put a trust in us, that it's my job to make sure that their downtime and their experience is the best it could possibly be. And I take that very, very seriously. I always have. And I think that's been a very large guiding light for Warped and its vision since, day one.
What's next on the horizon for Warped? Do you have any new blends coming out, or anything new you want to do with the brand?
We just put out the press the other day for a new brand that we have, which is the Devil's Hands. It's more of a spice dominant blend. Majority of the tobacco is from Esteli. So that's coming out. We have a very, very unique limited and regular product. So one limited for one size, and then it'll become a regular production with some other size. That information will be coming out probably in the next 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. We've worked on that for a very long time. It's a very unique presentation. So we're very excited about that. We have Lilia Rojo, our annual release, re-releasing this December. We're currently in the middle of a complete digital presence rebrand. Complete website is getting overhauled again. We're making it better. We're making it more informative, cleaner, everything that, you have to do in today's modern age, when everything is very, very digital. And so, we have a few things in the line, but, right now for us, just because of the growth of the brand, like I'm taking off for Nicaragua very shortly. I have to go to the Dominican Republic to go check in on our other factory we work with, which is Tobacco de la Isla. And then I'm going to be at Titan tomorrow.
You're all over the place.
Usually I am, and that's fine. I love what I do. And, seeing the progression of the brand and seeing, the progression of not only the brand, but just the blends in general, and, the dynamic flavor profiles that, we do offer. And it's always a fun process, but, it is a lot of work to keep up with. But, we love what we do. We have a great team here, and allows me the freedom to travel to these places and our factories and our manufacturing partners, and keep making sure that we keep that standard.
That's awesome. And then you're into wine, at least based off your Instagram. You're into wine. Is that something you do professionally, or is that just a hobby that you've
No,
gotten into, or what is your relationship with wine?
No, that's professional. So we have a winery in Napa. We have a leased acre on Howell Mountain. We produce 3 wines. Mostly about 90% of the brand is direct to consumer, and then about 10% is in some select lounges and restaurants around the country.
Is that a part of Warped, or is that its own entity?
No, that's its own entity. That's its own entity. I went to Napa actually for the first time in 2014 to look at the rejuvenative farming practices that's usually done in wine, biodynamics, and more eco-friendly farming techniques, to see if we could bring any of that back to Nicaragua to have an effect on rejuvenative properties to the land to create more quality tobacco. So it was a learning experience, and being able to translate some of that knowledge that we learned into some test lots on some of the farms is interesting.
Is that something that you got into because of its relationship with cigars, or was that just a passion you had to get into wine?
I've always loved wine. I just never thought that I would end up producing wine, and having an acre in Napa Valley, and having the amazing relationship that we do with our members of that mailing list, and for everyone at Gellis Family Domain. And I've had some amazing, the similarities between the two industries are very, very, in line with each other. Much like you can sit in a cigar shop and talk to someone, you have that camaraderie almost immediately, even though you don't know each other. You have that with wine as well, and, building those relationships. And, it was very, very, I felt very comfortable in that environment just because of how similar it was to the cigar industry. So, they work hand in hand. For me, I enjoyed both of them. I get to work in some amazing places, meet some amazing people, and I get to craft something that Mother Nature gives us.
Where can people find the wine you produce? Is it in retail, or is it? You said restaurants and lounges and. Yeah,
we're mostly direct to consumer. You can sign up for the mailing list at GellisFamilyDomain.com. Okay. We offer 100% cab to Syrah from Sonoma, and so you can sign up there. There's also a few retail shops in California that offer it, because we do typically sell out of it every vintage. So we always want to make sure that there's a few bottles floating around in a retail shop, either in St. Helena at Acme, or Falling Bright, which is in Orange, California. So we have it. We have a very good network of people that support it. To get it around.
Very cool. I'm based in Wisconsin. Our office is in Costa Mesa. So next time I'm out in California, I'll have to try to find that and give it a try.
Oh yeah.
But so very cool. Where can people find you? How can they get involved with the brand or try it? So you're independently distributing to shops. I'm here at Lake Country Cigars in Delafield, Wisconsin. We've got a bunch of Warped here. And so ever since I've started cigars, I've been aware of Warped and able to try what you're putting out.
Awesome.
But do you guys have online retail, or is it just
no, for Warped, it's wholesale only. So you have to go to a retail shop to get it. You can go to warpedcigars.com. You can click on the retailers page, and it will bring up every retailer that we have in the US and around the world. And you can find your nearest retailer and jump in there and give the brand a try.
Very cool. Well, I will do what I can to direct people to try your stuff and keep supporting your brand.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So thank you for taking the time to do this.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime you have any questions or anything like that, always just feel free to reach out. And for anyone who's watching, if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at Warped Cigars. Always feel free to, send us a message if you have questions about the brand, or, you need help finding something specific. We could do the best to our ability, to help you find that, and, if your local shop doesn't have Warped, mention it to them and have them give us a call.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you again. I won't take up too much more of your time, but we'll stay in touch. I'd love to be able to to feature you guys in the magazine and do some work with you in the future. So
I appreciate that.
very excited. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you.